This is a summative report. These are end-of-course, end-of-year assessments. Although they don't fully capture the whole picture of the student's year or necessarily all of our picture of our students, staff, and administrators, we do learn from these results about where we can improve and where we guide ourselves on the path toward best in class. This is a preliminary report because there still are some metrics that have not yet been publicly released. If you see a DNA or does not apply or not available, it's because we don't have that data yet. As soon as we get our hands on it and get it processed into a presentation, we'll include it in future iterations of this report. We start with the Future Ready Index, the Future Ready PA Index. That's the state's, quote, report card, unquote. There is a link, an active link on the presentation digitally where you could go live to that Future Ready Index. And the board has copies in your folders of each of the schools' report card. This index has been updated to provide the metrics from last school year. Metrics are available for any public, private, or charter school across the Commonwealth. And according to PDE's aim, the aim of this index is to recognize that students and schools that serve them are more than just test scores. It provides data related to industry-based learning credentials, access to rigorous courses of study, student academic performance, and growth on a variety of indicators. We'll start now with bringing our colleagues here from the administrative team to do various parts of the presentation. And so I'm going to pass the baton over there to Mrs. Wells.
Thank you. We will begin by summarizing recent and historical student performance on the state assessment measures. The Pennsylvania System of School Assessment are end-of-the-year summative exams given to students in grades 3 through 8. All students in those grade spans participate in the English language arts and math assessments. Students in 5th grade and 8th grade also participate in the science assessment. This chart breaks down the levels of performance across grades 3 through 8 on the ELA exam. 4% scored below basic, 28% scored basic, 49% scored proficient, and 18% were advanced. Overall, 67% of the test takers passed the PSSA ELA exam. This table shows the historical performance on the ELA PSSA exam. Overall, our proficiency rate dropped by 8% during the 24-25 school year. This table breaks down the 24-25 PSSA ELA proficiency rate across grade levels 3 through 8. We did see a decline across all grades. The fourth column shows the 2025 state average at each grade level. The fifth column shows the amount by which the state average increased or decreased at each grade level. Statewide, assessment proficiency rates in ELA decreased from 53.9% to 49.9%.
This chart breaks down the levels of performance across grades 3 through 8 on the PSSA mathematics exam. 12% scored below basic, 24% scored basic, 35% scored proficient, and 29% were advanced. Overall, 64% of test takers passed the math PSSA. This table shows historical performance on the mathematics PSSA exam. Overall, our proficiency rate remained stable during the 24-25 school year at 64%. This table breaks down our 24-25 PSSA mathematics proficiency rate in grades 3 through 8. The third column shows the amount by which the proficiency rate changed from the 23-24 school year. We saw an increase in performance in grades 3, 5, and 8. We saw a decline in grades 4, 6, and 7. The fourth column shows the 2025 state average at each grade level. We are pleased that each of our grade levels exceeded the state average, but have general concerns about the low numbers of proficiency statewide. It should be noted that the state assessment proficiency rates in math increased for the second consecutive year from 40.2% to 41.7%. Because Pennsylvania updated its science standards to the new PA Steels framework, the 24-25 science assessment served as only a field test. With approval from the U.S. Department of Education, scores were waived and only participation rates were reported, so no results count toward accountability this year. Beginning with the 2026 administration, the assessment will shift from the older 2002 standards to the new PA Steels content, increasing emphasis on life sciences, environmental literacy and sustainability, and a significantly expanded focus on technology and engineering.
This chart also shows the performance of students that take the IEP for proficiency. A central objective of our curriculum and instruction strategic plan remains the improvement of proficiency on state assessments for all students, paying dedicated attention to our students who receive special education services. I'm pleased to report that significant sustained progress in key areas. Our analysis of state assessment scores demonstrate continued robust growth in both mathematics and science. Specifically, we've achieved 31% growth in science over the last 4 years. Again, you see that this year was not included, but previously. In mathematics, we've increased 24% growth over 5 years, resulting in proficiency rates that actually exceed our pre-COVID assessment benchmarks by 36%. While we acknowledge that there's a slight regression in ELA, this occurred amidst substantial strategic changes. This past year involved the full adoption of a more regular CKLA curriculum and strategic placement of additional students with IEPs in co-taught settings. Crucially, the regression observed in our student subgroups on IEP was less severe than the overall state regression in ELA, indicating a positive comparative trend despite the major structural and curricular changes. We remain committed to supporting all students through rigorous curriculum and inclusive service delivery models.
Can I ask a question on that? A couple of slides ago, that the math performance, I mean, I just find it crazy that the state at 8th grade, 31% proficient. You know, there's just an article about this in the Wall Street Journal like last week, and they're talking about a national average. That's about the number nationally, too. And the idiotic part of the article was that school districts were actually making a case to colleges to kind of lower the standards getting into college. Like, it's crazy. Like, you know, basically, high schools are because they're not performing well, are begging colleges to accept less proficient students due to math. I mean, it's crazy, because at some point, you got to be responsible for your competency in math, you know? It's just crazy that that is the number for proficiency across the state.
Let me just respond to that before we go on to the next slide. We really do a lot of teeth gnashing about results like this, because we, as you would probably know from all your time on the board, we've put a lot of time into math instruction, math programming, math curriculum, math department, all these attentions. And when it doesn't grow like it should, you start to question yourselves, you question the efficacy of what we're doing, and are we even on the right path? What I think really where I've landed with this after looking at that statewide data is to wonder if, in fact, maybe whoever and however they determined that this bar arbitrarily set is what designates proficiency at that grade level. And let me just make up sort of a simple example, but somewhere along the way they decided that second graders should know how to do double-digit division problems. Well, what if they were wrong? You know, what if they arbitrarily picked that target, but it's really not appropriate, pedagogically speaking, for a second grader to do that?
So the curriculum standards may be
Right.
mismatched? Or
Right.
unrealistic?
That's that's where I have professionally landed after years of watching these results and watching teachers do what they do and watching the curriculum get the attention. It's dumbfounding to me that we can do everything right and the test still beats us up. I'm beginning to question that it's an appropriate test and we're measuring the right things, or we're measuring things in the wrong time frame. You know, I wouldn't want to assess an 8-year-old on their driving ability because it's not appropriate, it's not
Right,
their
it's
time
not
yet.
relevant, yeah.
But that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that as a nation, in our aggressive approach to compete with international students on the global stage with things like science and rocketry and technology advances, that we've sort of crammed too much and too soon. You know, when kindergarten is academic now. It didn't used to be, but it's very academic now.
Right.
Algebra was a high school class when I was in school. It's pretty much a standard 8th grade class now. We started crushing things lower and lower to try and get kids further and further, but it's not working because they're not getting, at least as far as the algebra threshold, in that aggressive push.
Interesting, and you have to ask also, since maybe we're trying to advance 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade too fast,
Yes.
actually not getting the fundamentals,
Yes.
so that's why it falls off in 8th
Right.
grade, because, and the unfortunate tragedy is that they'll never get it back. I
Yeah.
mean, if you go through 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, it's hard to catch up.
Yeah, good point. Okay.
The next 2 slides will show comparables to our benchmark schools. Benchmark schools are those with similar demographics to ours. They are similar in enrollment size, socioeconomic status, English language learners, and special education percentages. This table compares Ben Franklin's ELA and math performance to elementary schools among our comparable benchmark districts. Scores in green show that a school scored lower than Ben Franklin Elementary. Scores in red show that a school performed better than Ben Franklin. We outperformed Level Green Elementary and Fitzwater Elementary, and Sable and Rose Tree Elementary outperformed Ben Franklin. This table compares independent middle schools' ELA and math performance to middle schools among our comparable benchmark districts. Scores in red show that a school performed better. Scores in green show that we performed better. This table compares Ben Franklin's ELA and math performance to elementary schools among our neighboring districts. Scores in green show that a school scored lower than Ben Franklin. Scores in red show that a school performed better than Franklin. This table compares Neil Armstrong's ELA and math performance to middle schools among neighboring districts. Boyce Middle School, which is also a 5-6 building, performed at a higher rate than Neil Armstrong. This table compares Independence Middle School's ELA and math performance to middle schools among our neighboring districts. Similar to performance at the elementary level, all of our neighbors performed at a higher level, with the exception of Harrison Middle School. This table compares the number of parent religious opt-outs in the 24-25 school year. Happy to report that we are still on the decline of opt-outs.
The Keystone exams are end-of-course summative assessments given to students at the conclusion of Algebra 1, Biology, and Literature. Typically, as you know, students take algebra in grades 8 or 9, some in 7th, depending on which year they enrolled in the course. The biology exam is given in 9th and 10th grade, and the literature is given in 10th grade. This slide shows the results from the 2024-2025 school year. 5% scored below basic, 21% scored basic, 69% scored proficient, 6% were advanced, with 75% of the test takers passing the Keystone Literature exam in the spring of 2024-25. This chart shows the breakdown for our Algebra Keystone exams in the 2024-2025 school year. The below basic was at 16%, basic was at 42%, 29% proficient, and 13% were advanced. This chart breaks down the level performances of the biology Keystone exams in 9th and 10th grade students last year at the high school. 15% scored below basic, 25% scored basic, 35% scored proficient, and 23% were advanced. This chart shows the overall assessment for last spring. Those are the totals of proficient and advanced for those test takers during last school year. As a reminder, this includes students that are retaking the exam for a second or third attempt in attempts to reach proficiency. So overall, the admission of last year's test, it was 42% for algebra, 75% for literature, 60% for biology. Taking those numbers and then evaluating it over to what you see on the Future Ready Index, this table shows the historical summary of our students on the Keystone exams. This is the information that's reported to the Future Ready Index. It is a composite score of our students' best attempts on all of the exams where they take the two highest scores from both modules. This cohort is pulled every year from the 11th grade class, and this is what is reported and seen on the Future Ready Index. Similar to the PSSAs, the biology, as it goes to the new PA Steele's standards, it received a waiver in biology and it will not be reportable with accountability. But when you look at the Future Ready Index, you could see we did have some improvement in algebra and did reach the green level, and literature has maintained where it has been in previous years. This summarizes the increase or decrease in performance in the 2024-25 school year. It shows how performance improved or regressed in the Keystone exams. As you can see here in the chart, comparable slight improvement in literature and almost 13% increase in algebra from the previous school year, which was positive, including the where the state averages came in last year on the Keystone exams.
So on that, are we saying that we're at the state average for algebra on Keystones?
We are at almost 58%. The state
that
average
one.
is 40. Yeah, the blue is the state increase and decrease. The black is Bethel Park.
So on the previous one, for 2025, it says 42%?
So this is just a cohort, just 11th graders. The
Oh,
previous slide was
just-
all Algebra 1 test takers.
Oh, I see.
So they have, as you know, we have to graduate, you have to pass these to graduate, so this is the 11th grade cohort.
I see, okay.
First one's the admission last spring for all students.
All students,
The
okay.
next slide's the 11th grade cohort, and then the gray slide is the 11th grade cohort versus the state 11th grade cohort
Okay.
numbers. Yep.
Okay, and here you'll find the Keystone exam scores for a subgroup of IEP students taking the Keystone exam. We've shown growth, as you've seen here, with the math, in the area of math and the algebra Keystone. In ELA, concurrent with the state trend, we did go down in the area of literature. We're continuing to provide increased supports in SDIs through regular and team-taught class to continue the increase in achievement and growth of students with IEPs. It's good to note that we've had this increase in math, as this was an area targeted that Mr. Villani and I are working on. So this is a good trend for us.
The next slide, similar to the earlier ones, show the BPHS, ELA, math, and science performance to high schools among our comparable benchmark districts. Unfortunately, there's no green scores in this to show schools that we did better than. The scores in red indicate that we scored lower than our benchmark schools in this year, with relatively close performance scores related to Upper Dublin School District that we were slightly just under.
So why do you think that is, when you look back at the PSSA scores, we're kind of in the middle, you know, half are better than us, half are worse than us, but we're kind of in the middle. Here, we're on the bottom end. 2 tests measuring similar subjects. Where do you think the difference comes in? Is it the alignment with curriculum and?
I think that's where we're headed with this, is to make that determination. What are they doing differently, or how are they doing it, that are getting the significantly better results? And while we're just sharing them tonight, that work is what we're doing, you know, behind the scenes, I guess, on a regular basis, is trying to unpack the significant differences that we're seeing in these results.
Do we have a bias in our curriculum towards either of these assessments? Like, do we tend to bias our curriculum preparation to PSSAs versus maybe they're biasing their curriculum towards Keystone? Is there anything like that going on?
I don't know.
Dr. Walsh, for that math, so this is our cohort or schools that we compare to. Then a little bit ago when you said that, you know, when you're looking at overall what we're doing as a nation and we might be pushing too hard at lower grade levels, but if everyone's subjected to that, again, there's still a big difference there, right? Like if everybody's learning the wrong way, we're still losing, like in a way compared to the other schools that are also subjected to the same thing.
Yeah, so let me just draw a distinction. This chart represents those schools that are as much like Bethel Park as we are. We want to try and not, as tempting as it is, compare ourselves to a district like Mount Lebanon or Upper St. Clair, because they're just different. Economically, social composition of the school, their special education services, and the number of kids getting those services. These schools are very much like Bethel Park schools. What's confounding about this is that they're not just above the state average, they are well above the state average with their performance. As you saw in the previous slide, the state average in mathematics was 40-some%, ELA in the 60s. They're well above that, which is why we're having these conversations about what are they doing differently that are getting such impressive results.
This slide is a comparable to our neighboring districts. In addition to our traditional schools, we did add a couple others for context and purpose of where we perform locally. Again, looking at benchmarks and then looking at neighboring or districts that touch us geographically, seeing a distinct difference. The red obviously are schools that are outperforming us. The greens are the ones that we are outperforming in our local area here.
We'll now begin our exploration of growth metrics. PVAS data are available for students in grades 4 through 8. They measure student growth from one year to the next. They compare student performance to their own performance, not a standard. It also reports whether students have maintained, exceeded, or fell short of the growth standards based on their prior testing history. In this table from PVAS, we see each grade level's averaged growth scores in mathematics. When the dot is blue, the group of students show a change in scores above or well above the baseline of 0 on the normal curve. It doesn't say whether they passed the test. It only says if they performed better than the prior year. It would be said, therefore, that students made more than a year's worth of gains. A green score means the group averaged at or near the baseline. Here we say that the group of students averaged a year's worth of growth. Yellow is below the baseline of growth, and red is well below the baseline of growth. Yellow and red means the group of students did not make a year's worth of growth. During the 24-25 school year, grades 4 through 7 exceeded the growth standard, and grade 8 fell below the baseline.
The English language arts growth scores are indicating that students in grades 4 and 7 are meeting and/or exceeding a year's worth of growth. Students in grades 5, 6, and 8 are not making at least a year's worth of growth. A red PVAS score typically indicates that the observed academic growth of students in a particular group or grade level is lower than expected. Remember that PVAS scores are just one metric, and a red score doesn't necessarily reflect solely on the efforts of the teachers. Collaborative efforts involving teachers, administrators, and other stakeholders are crucial for meaningful improvement. Do we believe the lower scores in 5 and 6 are due to the change that was made in the ELA program? I think in grade 5, the CKLA program that we adopted is a 90-minute program in 5th grade, and currently our teachers have 82, 84 minutes. So being the first year of implementation, I would say that the comfort level and the pace in order to get through a curriculum was not necessarily where we would need it to be, but totally where we would expect it to be for the first year of implementation until they became comfortable with it. I think, I don't know that for sure, but I think it could be an educated assumption.
It would be interesting to look at those and use that to explain PSA scores or Keystone scores, just the absolute scores, or vice versa, use those scores to explain this, because, I don't think there's any area where we say we don't need growth, but, sometimes the amount of growth you're targeting is a lot more based on where you're at with those scores. So, this is an interesting metric, but by itself, it almost doesn't say anything by itself, because it's all based on where are you in your absolute scores.
Yeah, and they're changing this now so that it's no longer going to be absolute against absolute. It's going to be your predicted, according to an algorithm, what they predict you to do against what you actually do.
Okay.
So it's going to be the difference between, they'll calculate the difference between what they predicted you to do and what you actually did. You'll get blue if you did better than their prediction, which is, to me, is statistical mumbo jumbo. I don't think it helps a teacher to know that you're predicted to get a particular score. It only helps a teacher to know if you've grown compared to where you were the previous year. So it's
Yeah,
really it's changing the model of growth.
And it really seems like we should have our own goals. This is like setting a sales target, your sales quota for the year, and how you're going to go drive growth in your account. You as an account owner are going to set what those goals are based on where you're at today and what you see as opportunity. And so we should almost go through in a planning process, what is our goal? Do we have goals for each of these, or do we just, try to do the best we can? But it'd be interesting to quantify what we think our goals should be based on where we are right now.
Yeah, we don't set goals for growth. We set them for proficiency. Well, we
Yeah.
want all students to reach proficiency, which would be like, in this case, would be a 0 on the growth scale.
Yeah.
You reached what your expected growth should be.
Right.
This chart with the new PVAS methodology, predictive methodology that's in there, gives a little bit of an expanded view in where it's shifting as it has started with the Keystone exam. So what this shows in the expanded chart is the predictive methodology. And while the achievement scores on the 24-25 exams were not as high as we had hoped, when you look at the growth index, again, that middle line being 0 of where the students were expected to perform or whether they performed above where they were predicted. Again, with the fixed score and that, we did show above growth in the Keystone Biology and the literature based on the factors in the previous exams that filtered into that review, while the achievement and the performance and growth was well below in the algebra prediction methodology.
Wait a second. That makes no sense. Look at the data. It says in algebra that we had no growth under this new predictor. But if you look back at the data, 4 of our bars are in the well above or above. But yet in the new methodology, we're well below. And it's completely inverted for English language arts. We have 3 in the red, but here we're in the light blue or something. It's totally inverted.
Yeah, so if you got a perfect score on a test this year, if you got 1 wrong next year, you're going to be in the yellow or the red.
Yeah.
Which makes one feel like they got dumber.
Right. Yeah.
It really isn't the case. It's not about your performance as much as at how your outcomes compared to the prior year's outcomes.
Yeah.
And they're predicting that you should get the same number, it's built on the logic that you should get the same number wrong this year as you got last year.
Yeah. Without considering any kind of random variation.
Yes. Yeah.
It also says, I mean, the student count numbers are way off on the Algebra 1 compared to the biology and the literature. Can you speak to that?
This is based on the high school poll, and because the Keystone exams have gone down to the 7th and 8th grade, this is the PVOS predictive methodology for all high school students. So we have significantly less students test in algebra in high school versus the students that tested in middle school.
So this has nothing to do with our middle school students and,
This chart
chart.
does not. The other ones included them on the eventual cohorts include all students at any point taking the Keystones, and the spring admission, the PVOS growth indicator, does not pull the two schools together. It goes by schools.
okay, so that number could be significantly higher.
The growth metric would be impacted differently for the middle school students. If you have a 7th grade cohort of 2 sections of up to 40 kids, typically all but 1 or 2 get proficient or above on that exam. Their growth indicator, even if they get proficient, might not be as high. So I can't say with certainty that they would be above the growth indicator because, again, if they were predicted but took the course earlier and didn't get a high advance but got a 1505 and just made proficiency, their growth indicator could be yellow or red, but they're still proficient in the score. And vice versa, a student who, based on their previous exams, their DIBELS, their PSSA scores, was projected to get a 1470 but got a 1480, they performed above and would be blue even though they're not proficient. So ideally, we could be higher in our growth aspect if those students' predictive methodology in 7th and 8th grade algebra either got what they were predicted to get or did better. But if they did worse but still reached proficiency, they would be the other way to the left of 0 based on the predictive methodology and how the PVOS growth indicator works.
Wow, is that backwards?
It is. It's you can't look at them independently. I think it was what it said, because it could be misleading to think I grew, but my achievement scores did not reach the expectation of us as a district, and vice versa. We could reach it, but our growth could show less because they didn't grow as high as anticipated based on the previous data or performance on the earlier exams.
These data are for our 3rd year of using MAP growth in grades K to 8. MAP is not a screening tool or a diagnostic tool. It identifies what and where students are ready to learn on a skill continuum in reading and mathematics. These data are used to guide student groupings in our MTSS frameworks. We are able to see the percentage of students performing at or above other students with the same instructional days and grade level, as well as identify areas where improvements are needed to ensure students are on track academically. This table and graph summarize each grade level's growth from the fall to spring MAP growth ELA assessments. Students in grades K through 2 did not take these assessments. On the graph, the gold diamond represents the projected increase in RIT scores for a particular grade level based on the MAP growth norming calculations. If the blue bar exceeds the diamond, the students met or exceeded the projected growth. If the diamond is not contained within the blue bar, that grade level did not reach the growth projection. Positive growth indicates progress, while negative growth may indicate challenges that need our attention.
This table and graph summarize each grade level's growth from the fall to spring MAP growth assessment. Similar to the reading, when the blue bar exceeds the diamond, students have exceeded the projected growth. If the diamond is not contained within the bar, the grade level did not reach the growth projection. Happy to report that all of our grade levels 1 through 8 did reach that positive growth projection.
So can we go back for 1 second? We were using MAP as an indicator of how students would do on the state testing. What was the comparison? I mean, I can look real quick and I'm seeing, hey, English language arts was, you know, we only hit it in one grade level, and it kind of looks like that's where we only hit it in one grade level with that also.
It's
So
not
it looks like
consistent.
seventh grade is the grade that we excelled in mapping, and map for that. And then math is an indicator, and even eighth grade hit it and did not hit it on the, is that again because we're taking algebra in eighth grade and also the PSSA?
I'm seeing variation in projections lower than eighth grade. In my opinion, MAP projected us higher, like, it depends on the grade level, but they always said that we should see a very strong correlation between the MAP growth score and the PSSA score, or the Keystone score, if you're taking that, is not necessarily the same content as the eighth grade PSSA. And MAP just redid their norms. So essentially, MAP took their data from all over the nation and determined what was proficiency looking like at each particular RIT band. And when they did that, the scores are lower. They have lowered the benchmark to reach proficiency, showing that nationwide, kids are not reaching the same benchmark that they were. So we saw some variation, more variation than usual in the MAP this year. That could have been an indicator, but some of the projected rates were very, very off. Fourth grade, they projected 80, we were at 73. MAP projected 64. In sixth grade, we were 59. Eighth grade, MAP projected a 70% proficiency, and we were at 50%. So you do see a little bit of correlation sometimes with PVOS, but it's not consistent.
Thank you.
ELA.
So ELA, we saw the opposite. MAP projected a lower projected proficiency rate, and we saw a higher projected proficiency rate, which is interesting because MAP growth does not have any writing component. And we know that in grades 4 through 8, the text-dependent analysis, which is a writing component, is 25% of the student's score. So in third grade, MAP projected a 73%, and we were at a 72%. And then 4th through 8th, we were anywhere from 10 to 20% higher than what MAP growth predicted for our proficiency.
As for advanced placement exams, we've spent a lot of time covering these and some of the bright spots earlier this year. This has been a goal in the strategic plan to improve not only access but performance in scores. That was a task we took on when the board approved the National Math Science Initiative, NIMSI, that we did a few years back. We've now been 2 years, and I'm happy to say that our success rate in these exams has continued and maintained throughout at the high school. So if you look at those numbers, obviously the pre-COVID numbers, if you start from 2020 on, or 2021, is probably the best comparison. We had a unique group in that 2020 where we identified it down to specific students in that group that really boasted those numbers. But if you look at the consistency, we have risen in the amount of students taking at least one or more exam, and we stayed consistent from 186 to 184. While our exam count has tailored off, we have increased CHS from 16 offerings to 32. We still sit in there around almost 18 to 20 in 18 to 20 with AP offerings. But when you look at the performance, and I think the challenge that the teachers have been tasked with since AP Classroom came out in 2019, in just the amount of effort and intentional focus in those classes, AP Jam sessions during the lead days, and just even things with the recognition and the acknowledgement of the performance on those exams with the red cords at graduation, and just a lot of the other steps and tasks. in looking at data and just perfecting it. Teachers went through the workshops through NIMSY. They talked to teachers nationwide with different strategies and ways to do it. And I think we've benefited greatly from that, and we continue to see those scores. More importantly, again, the amount of students that got 3 or more, 3 plus is 161. So of those 184, 187.5%, you can't see the number right there, the bottom right on the screen, but we continue to go up in the amount of students with more tests, with more students getting 3 or higher. These next few slides, I just wanted to highlight these accomplishments, and just because they're not starred, there's some really significant contributions, and these are compliments to these teachers. So these stars are for them individually in each of these respective classes. When you see these numbers, when you have 29 students taking AP Lang and composition and they all get 3 or higher, that's what those percentages are indicating. The amount of students taking the exam and the amount of students that either scored 3, 4, or 5 on those exams. So even those classes that end up in the high 90s, tremendous results with students and staff alike. Yeah, the AP Pre-Calculus, 29 out of 30, 97%. AP US History, we had a first-year teacher in there last year, and 26 of his 27 students got 3 or higher, which was tremendous for a first-time AP teacher. With retirements, we've continuously, I think, gotten the right people to those courses to kind of onboard and take those over in those next years. Both SAT and ACT, we don't have the ACT scores right now, are nationally normed, recognized tests. They represent students' readiness for college-level work and vary in terms of content, format, and scoring. These allow us to reflect on the curricular programs and identify trends as students apply for schools and use these for entry exams. We did go up last year, around 186 people taking the SATs. More students are taking it again, even with test optional, as for many universities. Total scores here on the next slide, we show the increase there. So our average of those 240 was 1137 on that 1400 scale, with the respective scores in math and literature. And you could just see the comparative. We went down 3 on math, but went up 11 in writing. So again, on those national norm averages for that, our students are still performing. Some of our other exams that sometimes don't get measured or recognized, very proud of our vocational programs. Our NOCTI exam is taken by students at our vocational programs. So when you look here, of the 22 eligible seniors at Steele Center, 3 scored basic, 4 scored competent, and 15 scored advanced. So 19 students with an 86% pass rate outside of those 3 that scored basic. Parkway, it's only 1 student, but that 1 student did get advanced. Last year we had 2 seniors eligible that it was 1 and 1 at a 50%, so we knocked that 50% up to the 1 student that was eligible. Steele Center, obviously, with our commitment as a board and as a district, with the reconstruction and the expansion of programs, a lot more students are going there than years past. Any overflow students that can't get programs or are not offered at Steele Center are the ones we go there, but it's only a handful. 10 or less students still go to Parkway West. So 1 eligible senior who was advanced in their program. The ASVAB, again, as a district, we've been offering this for many years. We do this as the alternative to the 158 pathway. Now many school districts in Pennsylvania continue to do so. In addition to being the Armed Service Vocational Aptitude and Battery exam, it also gives the John Holland codes and some career education workstrand completion. This is an alternative pathway. So last year, between the spring and a couple retakes in this, between the fall and a few retakes in the spring, we administered 344 exams. 236 of those students, 69% of them met the alternative Act 158 requirement of a score of 31 or higher. So if they did not reach the proficiency with the Keystone exams or the alternative assessments, they were able to use this to meet that proficiency as part of the graduation requirement. 156 scored 50 or higher, which then just shows another broad aptitude, which is a good predictor for jobs, not only in the military, but jobs and placements based on their interest. Another outcome of importance, last year in our local scholarship night, now we do introduce our students to many other scholarships through Naviance and just other locals, but this is really homegrown local scholarship nights with either PTOs, groups, organizations, community members. But we had and then gave out that night 106,750 in local scholarships to BPHS students. Then there was other scholarships awarded in addition to that, athletics and other opportunities through universities and national scholarships as well. 8 students were commended last year by national merit. We had 1 semifinalist, 1 finalist, and 1 that received scholarship recipient and had money through the national merit towards the University of Florida. So that was a tremendous accomplishment and one who went further than we've ever had in our time here.
So the one piece of data that's still missing, still has not been produced, is the school performance profile number. It's a calculation of student proficiencies across multiple subjects, and it converts onto a 100-point scale. And they use that number, we use that number in teacher and administrator evaluations. So it's part of an algorithm that determines the performance of the teacher and their evaluation. I don't have those scores for you yet. What I did prepare for you, though, on the back half of the right side of your folder is a summary of the Allegheny County and some Washington County schools that we compare to, and how our students, I sorted them in order of highest performance to the lowest performance. And we're exactly where we were. All 3 metrics were the same ranking of 14th across in the 40-some schools that we calculated. That's on your graph for comparison. The SPP scores will do something similar to that, and when they're finished and reported to the schools, we'll prepare the report and share it with the board.
Maybe one thing would be interesting to look at also, when we look at these, whether PSA scores, Keystone scores, Future Ready Index scores, but plot them out on a 2-dimensional scale of scores versus cost per student. Because as a board overall, it'll kind of tell us, what are our 2 main factors, best education at the lowest possible cost, and comparing that to other districts also, especially as we go into the budget planning process. I think we should be thinking about, what adjustments do we need to do to kind of optimize that, results versus cost.
Okay.
Looking at our short-term actions, we have a continued implementation of CKLA with the core reading program in K-5 in the intervention model. We're ongoing right now with our K-8 math curriculum pilots. We have the K-5 and 6-8 doing 2 different ones in the fall. They're going to be doing 2 same curriculums in the spring. Those teachers then will bring that to you in the spring around April for an evaluation of the board and a consideration for a new math curriculum. We're continuing to pilot and adopt the PA Steele's aligned curricular resources in grades 6 to 8 biology and across the science Steele standards. One additional part, we talked about our national normed MAP testing, but we are continuing to expand the pilot for Firefly, and that is not an acronym, it's just the name, Firefly. We do have the CDT, which is a diagnostic test in the state of Pennsylvania that has a predictive on the PSSA and Keystones. The Firefly, though, is a benchmark test. Last year, we piloted the math and ELA. This year, we'll actually get the reports. Now, this year, the pilot is happening in the science and the PSSA section. So, we are piloting along with the state of Pennsylvania. They'll composite that data. And what we're hoping for in the Firefly is to have that benchmark assessment that's directly tied to the PSSA and Keystones. So opposed to a diagnostic that says you're performing in this band or this percentage of student, this will be actionable data that we can benchmark and then mid-year review prior to preparation for PSSA and Keystones to say, with a benchmark test, essentially, if I took this test today, this is what I would score. And that will actually give our teachers that actionable data mid-year to help either tweak, pivot, or prepare them specifically for either the areas they need or where they can go, where we expose them and educate them on all, but then we can create interventions and study plans for students based on what they need to get to their A to B, whatever that trajectory or growth may be. So very excited for the outlook and continuing to explore the Firefly. Grade to 5, we've used in-service time to continue completing the writing. Stage 1 and 2 are complete. Stage 3 is happening as we speak. Stage 1 obviously is the scope and sequence and standards. Stage 2 is the assessments and measurements. Stage 3 is the resources and the materials and all the things that are being used to assess and instruct students. Continue to develop multi-tiered system of support as part of our Universal Design for Learning initiative.
PDE sets performance benchmarks for schools. They expect that we will meet the following proficiency rates by 2033. They anticipate us reaching an 81.1 proficiency rate in ELA, a 71.8 proficiency rate in math, and an 83% proficiency rate in science. So that is the long-term goal.
As we move forward, it's important to recognize that the kind of growth we're pursuing is not of the quick fix variety. We're working toward deep, lasting cultural and philosophical shifts, changes in instructional practice, expectations, collaboration, and how we support students. These are systematic efforts that will take time to take root and even longer to show up in large-scale metrics like state assessments. But they are the kind of change that produce durable, sustainable improvement. We are committed to doing this work thoughtfully, consistently, and with unwavering focus for what is best for students, knowing that real transformation is a long-term journey. So what we see tonight in our test results is a mixed picture. There are bright spots, and the overall performance is not where we want it to be. We are a district that aims higher, and we believe our students can achieve more with the right supports and instruction. These results give us important information about where to focus. We also know that academic achievement is broader than a single exam. As we continue to develop our portrait of a graduate and personalize the student experience, it is essential that we monitor other indicators of success: career readiness, future-ready skills, regular attendance, active engagement, and the overall well-being of our students. Those metrics matter just as much as preparing students for the world in which they are entering. Our outcomes report tonight reflects both accountability and aspiration. We're committed to doing better and defining success in a way that reflects what all Bethel Park students are capable of doing. Let's open up for more questions.
So I don't have a question. However, this is so timely. I was at a historical society, and they had scads of boxes of education books. Books for teachers, books like for educators. And so I was like, that's cool. And I started digging. And I found a book called Better Schools. And I just let it fall open to anywhere. And I was completely captivated. I say this to encourage the administration and to maybe encourage the board as well. This book was written in 1914. And the same issues that we talk about as board members, as educators and administrators, are in this book. When I started reading, my jaw dropped, completely dropped. For example, here are some results of some test scores. Comparing test scores from 1846, the year 1846, and the year 1905. Spelling. So the number of pupils who took the test in 1846 was 85 students. In 1905, 245 took the same spelling test. the average percentage of proficiency in 1846 was 40.6%. In 1905, it was 51.2%. And when I saw this, I thought, oh my gosh, we have been fighting this battle for 111 years. And we still haven't figured it out.
What are you saying? We should give up?
Not at all, not at all. And my encouragement, because I've read, I've skipped around in this book, and the crux of the book is to keep striving, change it up, this is a guess and check game, really. And I think teachers can probably vouch for them, looking at Buffy down there, nodding her head. But I wanted to present this to just encourage you that it is the long game. Clearly, 111 years
200
long.
more years and we'll be there.
We might.
So just
We might find the
prepare
secret
yourself,
sauce.
okay?
We might find the secret sauce for 80.
It's not a race, it's a
It's a
marathon.
marathon.
It is an ultra marathon. It is an ultra marathon, and I encourage you to stay the course. That's what I think I got from this, just poking around in this book. The chapter that fell open was called Criticisms of Public Education. And I don't have it bookmarked, or I would read part of that to you too, but one of the criticisms is we teach too many things and don't stick to the basics, reading, writing, and math. Do we not hear the same criticisms today? 111 years later, we are hearing the same criticisms from the inside, and then there were some internal criticisms from educators. One of them was students lack gumption. Gumption! When I saw, we hear the same thing today. So history repeats itself. Things are cyclical. Stay the course. This is my last meeting, so I wanted to go out with a bang, and this is the bang. This is the bang. 111 years of history in education. Keep plugging through. Board members keep plugging away at making really good decisions for the kids. Administrators keep guessing and checking and looking at the data and trying to figure it out. There's no secret sauce. So if you want to borrow this lovely little gem, I knew you would. I knew you would.
That is really fascinating, and it is to an extent also kind of a relief to hear that, the similar struggles
Take a breath.
as a board member who journeyed with us for 4 years and encountered 21st century problems like, you're a strong advocate for internet safety as an example. I'm sure that's not in the book,
It
but
doesn't say anything about the internet in here.
but
No
it's
prophecies, no
but
prophecies.
it's trying to do the best for our kids with what they need at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting philosophical argument to have, or discussion of, does our kind of desire to enhance students' education with lots of different choices actually undermine our focus on helping them be good at the basics? The football analogy, Joe, like blocking and tackling, okay? Do you work on pulling guards and all that stuff before you can at least block and tackle? Yeah.
Is that by George Herbert? That's
Let's see.
what I say.
And your professors.
Yeah.
B.C. Gregory.
Okay.
B.C. Gregory.
I was gonna say, they pulled this one up, and I was looking at, there's AI, and there's ones from, stuff from 1914.
Yeah, he was the late superintendent of schools in Trenton, New Jersey, and in Chelsea, Massachusetts.
So very different places at that time.
Yeah. So, there you go. That's all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Questions? Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, sir.
We have executive session, so we'll,
So, yeah, we're going to close the meeting.
yes.
Someone forward, second? Second. All in favor, aye?